England today, the tide's out for miles and it's just started raining. I'm actually in Sandgate, which is just north of Brisbane. I'm back in my hotel room now, where it's a bit calmer and a bit quieter, and I was reflecting that 3 years ago I'd almost hit rock bottom in January 2023. So if you'd have told me then, oh, that in 3 years time that I would be in Australia, I would never have believed it. I'd been going through some challenges with my mental health, and I've talked a bit about it in my little series about ADHD. You can see the playlist there on my profile. I put a link in the description. And I just would like to talk this week about the journey since then. So if this is your first time here at my channel, welcome. I'm Helen, I'm 62 years old, and I'm starting a new life in Australia. Well, newish. I've been here a year, just over a year, apart from a brief trip to the UK. So the series of events that led me here, if I'd have planned it, I couldn't have envisaged how it would have worked out. And I think that's the thing, when you have a dream, when you have a goal, you have to be open that it probably won't go the way you think it is. So yes, so 3 years ago, I was really struggling with my mental health. Following a diagnosis of ADHD a year earlier in February 2022, and I'd been signed off work by my doctor because I needed some time, just to, some space to recalibrate, but I didn't have enough money to live on. And I did try applying for some jobs in 2022, but I was simply just not in the space for that. And I didn't get anywhere with that. I might have had one interview, I think, but it didn't work out for whatever reason. And so a friend of mine had actually told me in 2021 that because I was also self-employed, I could get signed off work, like you do if you've got a job and you're ill, you get signed off by your doctor. But it never occurred to me you could do that if you were self-employed. And I went along to the job centre, because that's where you have to go if you claim the universal credit, which is a benefit in the UK. They just amalgamated it all into one, so you get that if you're unemployed, if you're signed off sick, and there's other benefits in there as well, housing, I think, as well, other things that have all been put into that. And there is another one that's separate called PIP, which is for people with disabilities and if they can't work. Or no, it's not if they can't work, it's if they need support with their day-to-day living. They might be working and it's not means tested or anything. Anyway, I digress. So the Universal Credit, the Job Centre, this is overseen by the DWP, the Department of Work and Pensions. And so there's me thinking naively, when I look back, oh, well, I've paid into the system all these years. When I need some help, that's what it's there for, But oh no. I thought, well, they've got a note from my doctor, but then you have to prove that you're unable to work to them. They won't take your doctor's word for it, even though your doctor knows you way better than them. And it's a difficult one with mental health, because physically I was fine, I looked okay. I didn't really look probably any difference to how I do now, but there was a lot of days when I couldn't get off the sofa, and I still have difficult times, which I shared in my my video diary last week. A couple of weeks ago, I was going through a bit of a funk. Nothing like it was 3 years ago, but it's still there. And So by January 2023, I'd had an assessment, and the nurse, when I did it, she was lovely, you know, and I thought, oh, that went well. But when I saw the report, I just thought, was I actually in the room? And I appealed, and I said, you know, this wasn't true, the things that she'd said. But it's my word against hers. And then I had to go to another hearing, February 2023, and that was awful. It was actually in a court, and you felt like you were on trial. There was a judge and a doctor, both middle-aged men. The judge wasn't too bad, but the doctor was awful. And I was stressed at the time anyway. I had eczema on my arms. I'd never had eczema before in my life, nor have I had it since. And when I went to my doctors about it, as soon as I walked in the room, she looked at my arms and said, that's stress related. And I'm thinking, well, that doctor should have known that. It was itching, I was scratching, I was bleeding everywhere. And it was just a horrible, horrible experience. And then my appeal was rejected. So at that point, it's like, what do I do? I could have then gone to the higher court, and I had to wait and get a transcript. But when it came, I just couldn't bear to look at it, because I knew that was going to send me back into another depression. So I was like faced with a choice, and it wasn't easy, and it was actually quite hard for me to ask for support, especially from my family, you know, because I as I say, I'd assumed, because I pay my taxes, my national insurance, that I would get the sick pay that I was entitled to. But it was actually making me worse dealing with them. And I was, you know, say, if you didn't have mental health problems before dealing with them, you certainly would afterwards. And a switch went off in my head a couple of weeks later, and it was like, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. The doctor had prescribed me antidepressants, and I picked them up from the pharmacy, and that's when it was like, no, I'm not taking these. I don't want to be dependent, and I don't want to succumb to this victim mentality, which you kind of get sucked into. It's difficult to be in your power when you're dealing with these people. And then I started reading about trauma, and I talked a bit about trauma in my last video, and then it all made sense. This is because I couldn't understand why I struggled doing things, and why I was actually really emotionally dysregulated. I know the terms now, and that didn't really help. I didn't really know the words then, but I think, you know, when you're articulate, it's kind of, you can't win, because I can talk about what happens to me, but if you can talk about it, they don't believe you. So you're in a no-win situation. So I think, well, I've got to do this for myself. And I read lots of books on trauma, and it all made sense. I thought, now I know why this is happening to me. And so I just thought, I've just got to follow my heart. And I've done that this week, actually, or this weekend just gone, because I was staying near Brisbane, and I'm just outside Brisbane at the moment. I'm leaving tomorrow morning to drive a camper van down to Sydney. It's a relocation thing. It's brilliant. They need people to drive and you pay $1 a day and for your petrol and campsite fees. So I'm looking forward to that. And then I've got a few days in Sydney, and then I booked an apartment in the Blue Mountains for a week. And I didn't feel scared about spending the money, because I was reminded of back in 2024. I have to get used to not saying last year now, because it's not last year anymore. I travelled around Australia for 3 months. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it, but it taught me a lot about faith. And one of those things is coming back to doing YouTube. And I'm actually going to pay somebody to help me to grow my channel, to help me get my videos seen by more people, and you know, with the keywords, the thumbnails, and all the things that you need to do, the SEO stuff. And of course I'm going to have to pay for that, and it's like, it's a bit scary, but it's having that faith, because 3 years ago I was living hand to mouth. I didn't know even from month to month how I was going to pay my rent, and I just learnt to live in the present moment, to come to the moment, be grateful for what I have today. I've got a roof over my head, I've got a bed to sleep in, I've got food in the fridge, so I'm better off than a lot of other people in the world. And that's not to diminish anybody's experience, and not diminishing my own either, because the struggle was real, the symptoms were real, but it's about being able to detach from them. That's not like suppressing them or pushing them aside, but it's, you know, if you follow me, you know that I've been meditating for a long time, and it's being able to observe that without reacting. And that's very hard when your brain goes into a trauma response, because you cannot intercept that, because the brain, the amygdala, gets triggered and boom, off you go. And so I understand that now, and I can be more objective about my experiences. I can be kinder and more compassionate to myself as well. And it's not easy. And I know also that I'm very fortunate that I was able to get support from my family, and feeling all emotional now. Yeah, and I was able to do this, but it took a lot of faith. But also I was at a point where I had nothing left to lose. So it's like, well, I might as well do it. If it doesn't work out, I can go back to the UK. The worst comes to the worst, I can go and work as a teacher again. And there's always support. My parents I can stay with. I've got a friend who's said I've always got a room at her house. So although I don't have a permanent home, I do have places I can go, I can stay. And I've been doing workaways, and I've talked about that before, and that's what I've been doing for the last 3 weeks, and it was lovely. But I just feel like actually I need some time on my own, and I got inspired to do YouTube again. And the thing is, I think I was forgetting that if I follow my heart, it becomes more effortless. I don't have to sit in a room and try and force it. So at the beginning of the video you saw me on the beach, and now I'm sitting in my hotel room. I paid for a nice hotel because it's just around the corner from where I'm picking up the van, and I mean, it's not a fancy one, it's a Comfort Inn, a motel. It's not the cheapest, it's not the most expensive, but it's just around the corner. And I thought, well, you know, the effort and time I would have to, if I just book somewhere cheap, this is like a 5-minute walk, and I can get there at 9 o'clock, and that gives me more time in my van. And so it's like I've got enough money to pay for it, and I get stuck in this kind of loop where I just look at how much money I've got in my bank account, and I think that's it, you know. Oh, I've only got this amount of money, but there's more money coming in. I've got my pension, teacher's pension. I get money from Insight Timer, and hopefully soon YouTube, and my Insight Timer following is growing, my YouTube following is growing, and with the right support, I know I can get there. And you can support me too if you're inspired. You can donate, you can buy me a cup of tea, or you could, and just following helps, and watching my videos, because it gets my follower count and my viewing hours up, so I can have enough to join the YouTube partner program. So I appreciate you, and if you're wherever you are in your life, just know that a way out is possible. You might not see it at the time, and sometimes you have to go to those dark places before you see the light, kind of thing. And listen in those times, just because I was on a retreat, and at that time it was a week after I'd had that awful experience in that court, and I was really low. And one night I was in bed, and it's very dark there's no street lights or anything, so it's pitch black, you can't see anything, and there's a little voice in my head that said, Helen, you deserve to live, and so do you. You deserve love, you deserve kindness, you deserve happiness. We all do, and I wish that for you as well. So thanks for watching, and I will see you the next time. In the meantime, take care, go well, lots of love.